Good evening to all of our viewers and listeners. Shalom Uvrocha from Yerushalayim. The Shiur we would like to speak about today, the title therein is The Power to Prevent Dejudaization in Israel. It's a major problem, unfortunately. The entire Jewish people, different levels, of course, of the Jewish people, this past week expressed tremendous heartfelt grief and mourning and the tragedy that occurred to the 6 hostages. Of course, they were afflicted, no question about it. They were treated in a terribly evil way, psychological pain and suffering, physical pain and suffering. So this was basically the climax of something which unfortunately would have taken place regardless of the negotiations that are going on to have a ceasefire in lieu of returning the other hostages. However, those that felt grief, and those that mourn this terrible tragedy, unfortunately had a fringe element in the land of Israel that simply astounded them. They were being buried. There was demonstrations against the government. The government is at fault. The government doesn't know how to negotiate. America, especially the president of America, pressures the Israel government, those that negotiate, just to capitulate, given everything. And the mentality of Hamas is a very simple mentality. We're all aware of it. No novelty is being said over here. The very second that you acquiesce to their demands, they demand more. It's not a people that you could really deal with because their negotiators are just buying time. And what they want is a complete capitulation of the Israeli government to their outrageous demands, which will only be the preparation of continuous violence and warfare against the Jewish state. So we had this week something which we never anticipated. As much as we didn't anticipate certain reactions of an element, which we're calling a fringe element of the Israeli population, but this we never anticipated. The bereaved families of the hostages could not believe that this fringe element, insofar as their reaction was concerned, instead of an outpouring of grief and some sort of solidarity with these families, when demonstrated against the government, blamed the victim, blamed the government, and exonerated America insofar as the pressure that they exert. And no one ever thought of pressuring Hamas. Hamas is an organization of terrorists and murderers, cold-blooded murders, that nobody has the audacity to criticize them. They're not criticized. And these bereaved families were so devastated by this fringe element. I hope it's not more than a fringe element of their selfish, politically motivated outpouring of demonstrations, etc., and criticism at a time when a minimum Jewish sentimentality should have been expressed. They were horrified. They were terrorized by these elements. and people that are not religious Jews took their side, and they wrote articles explaining that these individuals, unfortunately, have come to such a low level that they are almost completely de-Judaized. There's a de-Judaization, and these are proponents that the Jewish people should become unqualified, assimilated with all other peoples of the world. In other words, they want, in a religious sense, this is what commentators that are not religious said, that the Jewish selfhood and the natural type of preservation which is necessary for the Jewish identity to be completely destroyed. There will be no more Jewish identity. What will Israel be? Israel be a geographical place for somebody who is Jewish, and then people will be able to claim that they're Jewish. They'll also have a place over here. They'll speak Hebrew, they'll speak Arabic, they'll speak English, whatever it is. This is the first time we have come to such a dismal level due to a despicable reaction, horrible, deplorable reaction by this fringe element. These are fringe groups. What motivates them? Pure political motivation. What inspires them? Monies that they get from organizations to undermine the civilization in Israel as well as the civilization in the entire world. What can we do about it? So this week, in the Parasha Shoftim that we will read, it occurred to me that we do have a very powerful weapon. And this weapon could be used by everybody. Men especially, also women, but especially men, could be utilized to prevent the de-Judaization of elements in Israel and perhaps also in other areas of the world. The Gemara in Brachas makes an unbelievable statement. Amar Ulo, kalakere kriya shema b'loy tefillin, kilu meyed shekel al atzmai. If someone reads Krishma in the morning and he does not don his tefillin, so it's as if he's made sheker al atzmai, it's false testimony. What does Rashi say? Who is atzmai? So we would have thought al atzmai means himself. We'll soon see why. But Rashi says it's only a lishna mahalia, it's a euphemism. He's forwarding false testimony. Al atzmai means vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It does not mean he bears false testimony against himself, but rather he accuses himself during the act of Kriya Shema. He accuses himself of falsehood, as it were, lying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's exactly what the Madone Yontif says. Shiilu heyedemes, if he would testify truthfully, when he says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, so he would be Mekayim the mitzvahs, he would fulfill the mitzvahs. And what does it mean by Atzmai? The Odoin, in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shetziva, Shulkairei, Krishma, and in Krishma we have a list of mitzvahs, including tefillin. So apparently, Tosfos and Rashi both explain the reason for this sharp expression of accusing oneself of bearing false witness and false testimony regarding HaKadosh Baruch Hu on account of the fact that mitzvah tefillin is enumerated in both sections of the Kriya Shema. Therefore, if a person recites the commandments to perform mitzvahs tefillin after he has accepted oil malchus shamayim, the yoke of the kingdom of heaven, and also the yoke of fulfilling the mitzvahs of the Melech Malchai Amlachim, the King of Kings, and he's surely capable of doing so. That's the case that all the Rishonim bring down. He has it available to him. It's accessible to him. It's possible to perform it. Yet he disregards and he neglects the implementation during the act of Kabbalah's Ol Malchus Shamayim and Kabbalah's mitzvahs. It's a proclamation of acceptance. So his entire acceptance is in a contradiction, and it's simply untruthful. And of course, the Rishonim asked questions. But one question we should like to direct ourselves based on what the Tosfos and Rashi says, and we'd like to address one question. That's what we would like to address now. And it arises almost naturally. What about mitzvahs mezuzah? In both sections of Kriya Shema, we are commanded, Uksaftem al mezuzah beisecho visharecho. We shall write on the doorposts of our homes a mezuzah. Yet we do not find, the Gemara says anywhere, there's no statement to the effect of Kol HaKoirei Kriya Shema B'loi mezuzah al beisai kilu meit sheker al atzmai. It's false testimony directed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's Mekabel Ol Malchus Shamayim. He has the ability, the capacity. He has a mezuzah lying on the table, affixed it to the doorpost. No, he doesn't do it. That's the case. Just like the tefillin are available to him to fulfill the mitzvah and implement the mitzvah, likewise, the mezuzah is also available, and he does not implement the mitzvah. So we don't see such a Gemara. So perhaps we have a right to answer the question by clarifying and defining the very, very fundamental yesod of mitzvahs Kriya Shema. What is mitzvahs Kriya Shema? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Basically, it's to proclaim, like the Rishonim say, it's basically a proclamation of the kingdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the entire world. Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, God is our God, Hashem Echad, He is one and only. He's one and the only one. Why? Because nothing more really exists. Like the Baal Tanya explains that everything in the cosmic universe is negated and nullified to the one Rebbeinu Shalom. And if something does exist, human beings, creatures do exist, his handiwork does exist, the world and the planets, the very outskirts of the cosmos do exist. It is on account of the fact that Kadosh Baruch Hu is kind and good and merciful, and he shares his existence with all. But actually, there is only one existence, one reality, that of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, it's a proclamation of Ein Oid Milvadai. Nothing basically in reality exists except HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and any object that exists, any human being that exists, is because we share in the existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He participates us to a degree in his existence. And that's why we say Echad stands for three words. Echad is a Yochid Gomel, the only one, the one and only, the most unique existence. Ches is Shiva Rekiyim, the Oretz, the seven heavens and the globe, all the planets. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the king of the world, the king of everything. Daled Rucha is all directions. This is a composite of all things that exist, and they exist within the context of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's existence. So this is the meaning of Kabbalah's Malchus Hashem. Everyone and everything owns its existence to Kaviyachol, because everything comes into existence through HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he is the proprietor of all, including all the people as well. So that's when a Jew proclaims Shema Yisrael, his intention, of course, is that all the Jewish people, anywhere they are and everywhere they are, should be inspired and impacted by the message of Einoi Milvadoi. Even if a Jew conceals himself in total seclusion, and he recites the Shema Yisrael with the proper kavanah, with the proper intention, fervently and enthusiastically, he accepts the kingdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu over entirety, in all the Elamis. So we believe Be'emunah Shlema that his words will emanate and radiate like lightning, and like the process of emitting energy in the form of waves and particles. Likewise, the Shema Yisrael will resound in every Jewish neshama, even if a Jew is in the most God-forsaken corner of the world. Nevertheless, for this message to emanate to all the Jews wherever they are, first and foremost, the one who proclaims the sublime, awe-inspiring message of Einoi Milvadoi must himself, at the very outset, be the one to discern and absorb the message for himself. Like Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said, here we have it. The first number one, Yisrael, in Shema Yisrael is the person himself. And then, and only then, will Shema Yisrael have the dynamic, spiritual energy to reach Achenu B'Sareinu, our brethren, with the proper forceful impact, penetrating into the deep recesses of their soul and changing them, bringing about a total transformation in the religious commitment, and it's a real religious awakening. And we Jewish people believe Be'emunah Shlema, that the movement of Kiruch Rechoikim, being Mekarev, bringing closer to the fold those that unfortunately have left. So there's no question, this is indispensable. The whole movement of Kiruv Rechoikim is indispensable to our present and future existence as a Jewish nation. We laboriously try to be Mekarev the Rechoikim through influencers, mashpiyim who travel to all the kibbutzim and the Meishavim and engage secular Jews in amiable discussions and question and answer sessions. The goal, of course, as we mentioned a moment ago, is to awaken and to arouse their dormant Jewish identity and find their real selves. Although this method and approach is extremely important, costs a lot of money as well, and we must utilize all means that is available to us in order to succeed in this great mission. However, the Tachsis Apnimi, the most high-powered and effective means to achieve this is Shema Yisrael. When recited correctly, will reverberate in the hearts and the souls of all Jewish people. Consequently, it depends on every one of us to the extent of the emunah, of the faith that each and every one of us has in ein oid milvadoi, nothing more exists than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we have to instill this in the pneumius of our nefesh in order that it should have an input and an effect on other people. Once, when Maran Rosh Yeshivas Hatzal, Reb Aaron Kapler, was at a meeting with other Rosh Yeshivas in the building of Agudas Yisrael, a telegram arrived to one of the Rosh Yeshivas, who upon reading it was overcome with joy. So Rav Kapler inquired, what's the content of the telegram that precipitated such happiness by you? He responded that until now, the Talmidim of a certain yeshiva who were also enrolled in college were forced to travel from the campus of the yeshiva to downtown. And there was a great distance. Each night they had to undertake this distance of traveling in order to attend the classes. So now the Rosh Yeshiva was able to convince the professors to give classes in the yeshiva building, and thus make it easier for the Talmidim. The Baron Cutler heard this, he became enraged and responded, "This is good news? This makes you happy? It's tragic. Professors should come to a yeshiva kedosha inside the building? In the Shiurim, where you learn Torah and teach secular studies?" After a moment, the Baron pointed his finger to this Rosh Yeshiva and said, and this is a remarkable story, and this is a remarkable insight in one of the greatest Talmidei Chachamim of all time. The Baron would have been a Gadol B'Torah 300 years ago as well. All the Gedolim said it. So the Baron pointed his finger to the Rosh Yeshiva and said, "It's your fault. You are to blame. Because you were 7 years old when this Rosh Yeshiva was born. And you were present the night before the Bris Milah. With the Minig Yisrael, the custom of the Jewish people is to say Psukim in the presence of the baby, 7-day-old baby. And among the Psukim that's prominent is Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So the Baron Kallah exclaimed, had you recited Shema Yisrael with a greater kavanah, he never would have thought of doing what he did. So you're at fault. Here we have a great Rosh Yeshiva who believed, like Shner Kallah used to say, Be'emunah Shlema, what the koyach of a Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, even by a child, 7 years old, he also has that dynamic, powerful force. In this week's parasha, we have an unbelievable example of this. The Jewish people basically have two Kohanim Gedolim. Everyone's familiar with the Kohen Gadol, that the Kohen Gadol is Oved B'Mikdash. He serves in the Beis HaMikdash on Yom Kippur, for example. All the avodas, all the services, the multi-services of Yom Kippur are only kosher boy, are only qualified to be proper ritual observance if they're performed by the Kohen Gadol. But we have another Kohen Gadol, and he's called the Kohen Gadol. He's called the Kohen Gadol Mashuach Milchama. Like Rashi says in the parasha, he was anointed not to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, to be makriv karbanis, to offer sacrifices, to do other types of services in the Beis HaMikdash, but he was anointed to deliver a short speech before the Jewish people go into war. And the Ran told us that this individual is supported by the community. And of course, the question naturally arises, the question was asked, obviously, that why does he deserve the Mashuach Milchama? Why does he deserve to be paid from the communal treasure chest, just like the Kohen Gadol that's over the Mikdash? Although the Kohen Gadol that's over the Mikdash serves every day, barefoot. He's obligated to bring a meal offering in the morning and the afternoon, barefoot. It's cold, it's raining. He's there every day, all seasons, a man of all seasons. He brings about atonement for the Jewish people, slicha mechila, forgiveness on a daily basis. So we understand that his salary is justified. And the community indeed pays his salary. However, the only service that the Kohen Mashuach Milchama performs is before the Jewish people, the Jewish army engages in a war. So he says 2 psukim, no more than that. It says, when you go out to war against your enemies and you see horses and chariots of people more numerous than you, obviously you'll be afraid. So we say, do not be afraid of them. And as you draw closer to engage in war, and you see you're outnumbered, the enemy outnumbers the Jewish army, so then v'nigash HaKohen v'diber la'ol, the Kohen approaches and he speaks to the Jewish people and he says 2 sentences. Shema Yisrael, atem krev me'elam b'chama lo yivechem, al yera levavchem al tiruv, al techapsu v'al ta'alzu mipneyem. Ki Hashem Elokeichem ahoylech, imochem li, lochem lochem oivechem lo she'eschem. Easy to read the English. Here, Bnei Yisrael, today you're approaching the battle against your enemies. 4 levels of fear, of terror come into your heart. Let not your hearts be faint. You shall not be afraid, and you shall not be alarmed, and you shall not be terrified of them. You know why? Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu, your God, is the one who goes with you to fight against the enemies, to save you. That's all he says. And it's possible that there might not be a Milchama during his reign, or in the time that he's a Kohen Mashuach, Milchama, according to the simple pshat of the psukim. So could be he'll never have to serve. He'll never have to perform this task either. Afterwards, we have the Shoitrim, officers that speak, and they speak about the fact that not everybody is obligated to go. You have exemptions. You have exceptions, but that's the Shoitrim. That's what the pasuk says. The Shevidibra Shoitrim. Somebody just built a house. He didn't have time to dedicate it, so he's exempt. So where's the Yosha? Where's the justice that he should draw such a salary? And if a Jewish soldier should be seized with fear, 4 levels of fear, so he's over allowed. In other words, there's 4 levels of fear that should he be seized with any of these 4 levels, he's over an Aveiro. And of course, this is difficult to understand, because when someone goes into battle, how is it that we instruct him, or the Kohen Mashuach Milchama instructs him not to be afraid, not to be seized by these four levels of fear and fright. And if should he succumb, he's over four Averas. He's going into a fire. He sees that the legions and legions of the enemy outnumber the Jewish soldiers. It's natural to be afraid. How can we tell them, don't be afraid? So the answer would appear to be very simple. Who is this Koyach Mashiach Milchama? Who is he? He is a person that works on himself in seclusion. The Kohen Gadol that's over the Mikdash, we see him publicly. He has a public position in the Beis HaMikdash on a daily basis, and he is available, accessible, and everyone sees him. However, the Kohen Mashiach Milchama, when he was designated to be this unique Kohen that has to read these two psukim, so in order for him to do his job properly, so he has to work on himself laboriously, that he should reach the level of Kirvas Hashem, that he is close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when he reaches this lofty level, these great exalted heights, so he becomes transformed into a vehicle of Dvarim Hayotzim Min Halev Nichnosim Halev. They emanate from a heart that believes be'emunah shlema ki Hashem Elokeichem hahoylech imochem leilochem lochem. God Almighty will accompany you, and He will fight for you, destroy the enemy, lo yishiaschem, and you will have salvation. He believes it 100%. Through days and nights in which he worked on himself in order to accumulate in his inner being and personality this Kedusha, is absorbed with this Kedusha and with this faith. We never saw him. When he stands on the lectern and he delivers this message to the Yotzei Tzava, so this is something they never heard before. And it was simply impossible for them to discern this message. If somebody would have read this pasuk that we just read now 1,000,000 times, he would not discern the meaning of it. It would not enter into the depths of his existential soul to transform him from being afraid, which is a natural response and reaction, to becoming a hero, to being courageous, not having any fear. Because he's not on the level of the Kohen Mashiach Milchama. The Kohen Mashiach Milchama's words emanate like a baskol, a voice from heaven. It comes from such sanctity, such depth of the soul, and therefore it penetrates bechadrei chadorim, it penetrates into the pnimius and the soul of every single one of the Yotzei Hatzava. No one heard this message clear as they heard it now. It's impossible. He had a supernatural, special koyach that could dispense all natural fears of the Yotzei Milchama. And in 1 second, as soon as he finished reading these two psukim, Berega Kotain, all the natural fears will be replaced with the all-powerful emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he will destroy the enemy, and indeed he will bring about their salvation for the entire Jewish people. We are not on that level, but we should strive, like the Baron Kutler said, we should strive. Every single Jew, when he recites the Shema Yisrael, has to recite it also with a specific power, just like the Kaim Yeshua Muhammad, that he is addressing the entire Jewish nation, the most godforsaken places in the world as well. And it's as if he's speaking into a microphone that the voice will carry thousands of miles. This is part of the mitzvah. Nevertheless, he has to possess the intellectual knowledge and the emotional feeling and awareness that when he proclaims Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, his words will penetrate into the depths of every Jew. But first, it has to penetrate into his inner being. And if it penetrates into his inner being and he has a total emotional, intellectual comprehension, then it will do the task, and Jews miraculously will be transformed into people that will question, is this the proper way for me to, I'm a Jew, should I conduct myself? This will bring about hirhurei tshuva, repentance on part of these people. Don't have the time to mention many stories that would simply prove the point. Nevertheless, as we mentioned a moment ago, we Jews are not on that level of the Kohen Meshurach Muhammad. So therefore, what do we need? We need an additional element. Would perhaps impossible for us to reach such high madrigas. So we have the sort of Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shamayim. Is like the Chidushei Arim said. What is the sort of Kabbalah's oil Malchus Shamayim? We accept to be the servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A Jewish person has to be a servant. He has to be a slave. It says, Ki li b'nei Yisrael avodim, v'lo yavodim la'avodim, v'lo yavodim le'paroi. Either we are slaves to paroi. Paroi, of course, is a concept of values that are antithetical to Torah, pleasures, deriving type of a lifestyle, materialism, looking for power, feeling superiority over others, all the negative, disjunctive emotions and disjunctive traits. We have an alternative to be Eved Hashem, but we will be Eved. We'll be enslaved to a false value system, or we'll be enslaved to the proper Torah value system. In Yiddish, the Chidushei Arim said, Avodim muzin mil zayin. We have to be Avodim. That is the way it was designated in our depth, in our personality, in our character. That's how it was destined for us to be. To understand this in a conceptual sense. So therefore, if we undertake a process of purification and we dedicate, devote ourselves, unqualified to be Avdei Hashem, so there's no question about it, we've reached a very high level. Yet the Rishonim told us that in mitzvahs tefillin, there's a unique extra koyach of kedusha. And we have in front of us here the Rambam. The Rambam says, Kedushas tefillin kedusha gedolim. Shkos man shetfillin ala roy shalodom. One of Yorei. In other words, the kedusha, the shas tefillin, is such a great kedusha during the Kiyum mitzvah, Vanochas tefillin. Such a great kedusha that the kedusha becomes assimilated into the individual. that's through the medium, the vehicle of the Hilchas Maisa, of the actual implementation of the mitzvah of Tefillin. It's Yichud Hashem. So therefore, since Tefillin is unique, what's the whole mitzvah of Tefillin? Like we say, is it Tefillah beforehand? The Yiratzon. Loniach Tefillin alayad. Why? Lezichron Zeraya Nituya v'Kadosh Baruch Hu. And where does it have to be? Neged alev, opposite the heart. L'shabed bozet taivas v'machshavos. L'avodosa yizbarach. The symbolism is that the tefillin on the yad, on the zraya, the upper arm, opposite the heart, to drive away all bad, negative, disjunctive desires, and to enslave our hearts to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what do we say on the tefillin shel rosh? Shaneshama shebemoichi. My intellectual capacities should all be mishuabodim la'avodosa yizbarach. Why? Mishnah Berurah says it very, very well as well, because that's a kiyum of Kabbalah Malchus Shemayim. Total negation of oneself, total acceptance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mastery over the world, that He is the Melech Malchei HaMlochim. The Einoid Movado, it comes to its expression and its revelation in Hilchas Maisa. In other words, the fulfillment of mitzvahs, tefillin, is identical to Shema Yisrael. One is b'dibur, oral proclamation, and one is with the Hilchas Maisa. It is with the actual fulfillment of a mitzvah, with an activity. So therefore, when someone wears his tefillin and proclaims the Shema Yisrael, he profoundly, in his deep recesses of his neshama, is capable of discerning much better Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one, the only one. Because mitzvahs tefillin serves to instill in a person the entire Torah, which in one word is Ein Oid Milvado. Few words. Hashem Echad. God is only one. Therefore, going back to the original question that we asked, why by mezuzah don't we say that called Akari Kriyash Mabaloy mezuzah is made Sheker al Atzmoy? Answer is simple, because mezuzah is a separate, independent mitzvah. It does not correlate to Shema Yisrael, whereas mitzvahs tefillin is also Kabbalah Malchus Shemayim. Instills a person with kedusha, with sanctity and holiness, to the extent that he now, in the depth of his mind and soul, understands and feels Ein Oid Milvado. So therefore, that combination is like the Maharsha says, Apishnayim Eidim Yokum Davar, you need two Eidim. So if you have both, so it's Eidus Emes, you have two witnesses, Shema Yisrael and Mitzvah Tefillin. So that's Apishnayim Eidim Yokum Davar. Going back to the question, we don't ask a person when he recites Kriya Shema, where's your mezuzah? Because mezuzah is a separate mitzvah, has nothing to do to instilling in a person the kedusha of Kabbalah's Olmach for Shemaim Ye'ein Olmach Vadoy. But where are your tefillin, we ask you? The tefillin are available. What are you interested in? Spreading them faith. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. But first you have to have it in yourself. What produces the effect that you have it in yourself? Mitzvah tefillin. So your Me'et Sheker al Atzma, your whole Kriya Shema does not have the effect that it should have if you don't put on tefillin as well.